Good afternoon. Today is 28 May, the year 2010. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in Palm Springs, California. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. Today, I'm here at the museum along with fellow volunteer Greg Kenny and special guest Marjorie Harlow. Not Jean, is your middle name Jean?
No.
No, okay. You look kind of like her, same color hair and everything. And today we have the honor and the privilege of interviewing Aviation Machinist Mate First Class Hap Harlow. Machinist Mate Harlow was an aircraft mechanic aboard the carrier Bunker Hill BB-17 in the Pacific during World War II. So we're going to talk to him about that and a lot of other things. Hap, so glad to have you here.
Same here.
Okay, now let me get you kind of lined up here. Okay. I'll tell you what. Well, I'm going to move you over here just a little bit. I think you got just a tad, a little bit more. Okay, there you go. That blue field clashes with your hat, so we gotta get it just right? Or Marjorie would
Very
be
good.
Marjorie would be very upset about
Oh
that.
yeah, I get real uptight.
Now, Hap, first of all, would you please repeat and spell your full name for us?
Well, my regular name is Harry S. Harlow. Was born March 1st, 1924 in Santa Ana, California.
1924, so that makes you how many years young?
86 now.
I look like you're going strong. Santa Ana, huh? That was a little bit different then than it is now, I would
Well,
assume.
that was a big town of 25,000 people.
And as we know, Santa Ana is kind of south of
Los
LA,
Angeles, yeah.
down in the Orange County. And your dad, what was his name?
Well, I'm a junior,
Okay.
unfortunately. But,
And they never called you Junior, though, or?
I had been. I finally outgrew it, though.
Okay.
Got to be taller than my dad.
And what did your dad do?
He was in the auto parts business. It was a company called Hockaday, Harlow and Phillips that had parts stores all the way from Whittier to Oceanside, which is a pretty good size operation in the late 20s and the early 30s. But my dad had a collapsed lung in 1932 and had to sell his interest, and due to health problems, collapsed lung and everything, he was required to, or suggested that he move to a higher altitude. So went from Santa Ana to Lake Arrowhead,
Mm-hmm.
and I had the extinction or distinction, or whatever you want to call it, going to 3 different high schools in 3 years.
Wow.
Santa Ana for sophomore, San Bernardino for junior, and Palm Springs for a senior year. Graduated in 1941.
From Palm Springs High.
Yeah,
Wow.
there's 28 kids in the class. Of course, I understand they're cranking them out by the hundreds now. So.
Oh, yeah.
But
Thousands,
there
maybe.
again, it was a kinder and gentler time.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, and how did your dad end up in California in the first place? Where did all the ancestors come from?
World War I, they were from Maine, and he was in the motor pool in the Army in World War I, and he got out and started the first Model T Ford garage in Fort Fairfield, Maine in 1919. But he didn't care for that, and they wanted something different, so they had an opportunity with several of his cousins. They all came to California. Some of them settled in Riverside, and he settled in Huntington Beach, then moved to Santa Ana. Started this parts operation that I mentioned in 1925.
Was it like a parts store, like you go down to the
Regular parts job,
you
yeah.
just walk in, kind of like you do now,
Yeah.
and
If you
get your parts.
want a water pump for a Chevy, that's what you can ask for.
Yeah. So when he was in World War I, did he go overseas?
No, he was just ready in Newport News when the armistice came. So
Yeah. And your mother, what was her name and her maiden name?
Verna Shaw Harlow.
Okay, her maiden name was Shaw then.
Shaw, yes.
And did they meet in Maine?
Yes, it's a long time, only girl he ever took a shine to.
And what did her father do?
I don't know. That's the unknown part of my ancestry.
Oh, okay. So, and so when you were born in Santa Ana.
Yes, sir.
And you were living where, or were they living right in Santa Ana?
Yeah, but North Ross Street.
Oh, okay. Remember the address?
1920.
And how many years did you live there?
Oh, from let's see, moved there 31, and we moved out of there in 1938.
Okay.
That's when they went to the mountains.
Yeah. But you were born in 24?
1924.
And did you live in that house then?
Yeah.
Yeah, same one, okay. And did you have any brothers and sisters?
I have had two younger sisters. They're both deceased by now. But,
And what were their names?
Elaine was 2.5 years younger than I was, and my other sister Janet was 10 years younger. In fact, she was born on St. Patrick's Day of 1934, so she automatically got the middle name of Patricia.
Oh. Was your family very religious? Did you go to church a lot when you were a kid?
Yes. Got stuck every Sunday in there.
Where did you go?
First Baptist Church in Santa Ana.
Okay. And now you grew up during the Depression. What was that like for you and your family?
Actually, compared to many of them, it was comparatively easy.
Was your dad able to work the whole time?
He was, yeah.
Okay, but he got sick later on.
Yeah, in 32, his lung collapsed. Then he had another one in 36. That's when he had to sell out his interest.
I
So
see.
in fact, they opened a big new parts store in Santa Ana in 1931, which was unheard of. But they managed it, and he ran a good, close-knit organization.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have quite the organizational partners that he had.
Did you ever work in the store?
No, I never was old enough. I was big enough to get in their shipping department, crawl through all their cardboard cartons and make a mess out of them. But other than that,
Did you have any odd jobs as a kid?
well, they all came when we moved to the desert in later part of 1939 and 40,
Oh, okay.
and the early part of 41.
Yeah.
I worked at a service station there for a fellow, a Shell station. It was right close to my folks' place. And I worked for the Safeway store.
Yeah.
It was down Palm Canyon Drive. And I worked for Plaza Garage as the gopher, so to speak. I deliver cars to people.
Is that the same Plaza Motors that they have now?
That's
The
the one
Je-
that evolved
the Jessups?
into Plaza Motors, yes.
Yeah. I think we know the Jessups very well, and
Yeah.
I think they've been with them for a long, long time. Well, going back to that Shell station, where was that?
It's Cornerville, Alameda, and Palm Canyon Drive.
Okay. It's not the one that well, that would have been a later one anyway. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
out there that day. Well, going back to when you were a kid in Santa Ana, did you go to the beach a lot?
Every time I could cut school, yeah.
Which beach did you go to?
Corona Del Mar usually.
Oh yeah, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you do any surfing?
No, I just got wet.
Yeah. Other than that, what did you kids do for fun when you were growing up?
Well, my oldest younger sister, her main purpose in life, I think, was to bedevil me. Especially when I got up to dating age to go to school dances. I always got to use the family car if I took her along too. That was not exactly my idea of fun, but that's all history.
What was the first family car that you remember that you had?
I had a 39 Plymouth station wagon that they used for the motels or motor courts then. But and then my first car was a '37 Plymouth Coupe. I got when I was just, I guess, wasn't a present or anything. I earned it from stuff I'd worked for with my folks because I helped them around the motel too. But,
Okay, so your folks had a motel?
well, equivalent to it, yeah.
Yeah, where? In
It
Palm
was on
Springs?
El Alameda Street,
Oh,
Palm
okay.
Springs.
What was the name of it?
Harlow Haven.
Harlow Haven. Is that motel still there?
Yes, but it's under a different name and different management and so forth.
Yeah. Okay. How long did they have that hotel? Up until when?
They sold it in, I think about '48. I was still in the Navy.
Oh, you were, okay, yeah. My wife's, she came here in 1956 and they bought a little hotel on Alejo, I think, in Palm Canyon there.
Yeah.
And so she grew up in a hotel too. Had one of the rooms was her room. I guess that's kind of like what you did too.
Well, like I was telling them out there that didn't have air conditioning in those days. One of my summertime jobs was to fill up 11 number 3 wash tubs with water every day, make sure they all didn't evaporate off.
Yeah, those swamp coolers too, I guess.
Yeah.
Going back to when you were in Santa Ana, do you remember what was the first grammar school you went to?
Jefferson, went clear through that to the 6th grade.
Yeah.
Then clear through Willard Junior High School there, and went 1 year in Santa Ana.
High school.
And that's when my nomadic career started.
Did you play any sports in school?
No, I was a high school football manager.
Oh, you were?
For his sophomore year, and I didn't have time to get into any sports in San Bernardino because I didn't know enough people to.
Now, but you were living up at Arrowhead, and you went to high school in San Bernardino? Is
Yes,
that correct?
we boarded there. We're into the world.
Oh, you did?
Hadn't even been built yet, so we boarded during the week.
Oh.
About a block away from the original McDonald's, which is a good habitat.
Now, when was that McDonald's? What year was
That
that?
would be 1939, 38, 39.
So it was there when you were?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
just had started at McDonald's.
And was it a big deal then?
No, just
a little something that.
kind of like what your earlier drive-ins look like, typical.
Yeah, well, I saw on TV a couple months ago. It was quite a long, very involved about the history of the McDonald's and
Oh, yeah.
how it started and how it ended up to, Kroc, I guess, or somebody bought it.
Yeah, he was a salesman
Yeah.
for somebody else,
Yeah.
bought the whole thing.
And then it was their idea, I think, to do the real
expansion
fast food
program,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. I think the original was just kind of a normal.
Well, the attitude for the war wasn't quite as expansive as what we discovered after the war.
So you moved to Palm Springs in what year did you say? 39?
Later 39.
And what year did you graduate from? Oh, so you
41 I graduated.
41 you graduated.
There's 28 kids in the class.
Yeah. Do you remember some of those kids that you were?
Yeah, one of the boys, Ham Hamilton, and I joined the Navy together
Oh, yeah.
as soon as I became 18.
Okay.
Split between 14 boys and 14 girls for some reason.
Yeah.
And I know they never faced with
Do
anything
you remember
like that.
some of the other names of the kids?
Oh, let's see, there's Don Pendry and Dick Outcall, Ray Sorum, and the Hall brothers, Alan and, of course, I even forget Bill. But that's about all of them that I remember because none of them ever came back to
Palm Springs.
Springs. They all went to the big city, I guess.
Now, had you been coming to Palm Springs at all much before you moved down here?
No.
So how did you adjust to the summers in the desert?
They were quite a deal, but well, they say, oh, you just take salt pills and keep on going.
Now, was there a pool at your hotel?
No, it was pre-war.
And so if you wanted to go to the pool, where did you usually go?
think I ever went to one, to tell you the truth.
And you said you were working at the Shell station for a while and at the Safeway.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then the Plaza Motors.
And okay.
Joined the Navy when I was working there.
What were you doing there at Plaza?
I was the gopher and take around the cars to the people that wanted them delivered, like Bing Crosby's wife and stuff like that, because it was a bunch of parking garages. It was a service facility at the time. That's how come we were also the Greyhound bus station, which I get to come down at 10 o'clock every night, make sure the bus through Phoenix came through there. That was it.
And were they selling Chevrolets then?
No, they had not got up to the car dealership.
Oh, they were just like
just a parking garage.
Oh.
Ed McCoubrey was the owner.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I think he's
name.
a father-in-law to somebody down there.
Yeah,
I
probably.
had never followed through on getting reacquainted with him.
Yeah. Did you see many movie stars around town? Do you remember?
Yeah, a few, but didn't make much of an impression on me.
Yeah.
Not a big career lover or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call him.
So do you remember what you were doing December 7th, 1941?
Yes, I was right at my folks' motel on that Sunday morning. I looked out the back window, right next door to the Palm Springs Florist, which is still there, which at the time were owned by some Japanese people, and they didn't bother opening their doors that day. In fact, they stayed behind the curtain pretty well
Yeah.
till the new wore off, so to speak.
I just interviewed a fellow a couple months ago, and he's Japanese American and grew up in Riverside, but then they moved down here, and it was down around Indio. In fact, his dad had a farm
Yeah.
of where the Shields date place
Oh,
is.
yeah.
And and of course they had to go to the, those camps over in Arizona.
Right,
And, yeah, so it was, yeah. So, were you up on current events? Could you see something like that coming, Pearl Harbor at the
I
time?
pretty well figured that, but I was only 17 at the time.
Yeah.
And I kind of waited till my 18th birthday, and then this is when I started getting serious about joining the service. And by that time, it was strictly the Navy. I didn't want to be a ground pounder of any sort.
And where did you go for boot camp?
I went to San Diego, California. Got a crazy duty, when they always tell you volunteer for truck driver. That means pushing a wheelbarrow around. And I did mess cook in every galley at the station. And the most important thing I ever did in the galley was flip a hamburger over on the floor. And I had to pick it up, carry it around to the cook, and asked him what I do with it. He said, throw it back on the stove. What the hell do you think it is for? But Ham and I was on the garbage detail.
Oh, so you guys both went in together,
Yeah,
and
we
you
were
got to the same,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, he broke boots first because he applied for air conditioning school, which after his 6-year hitch was up in 48, he got out and started Ham's air conditioning service in Indio.
Oh.
And became very successful after that.
Uh-huh.
But well, I signed up for 6 years and re-enlisted again in 48 for 2. Gave me 10 years. Of course, the shipping overpay was $1,600 back in that day, and that was big money, I thought. But
So when you were down in San Diego, had you been to San Diego much before, or had you been down there? Did you know much about the
I
town?
went to the zoo one time, I think,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Right. And that's when they had the ferry boats going over to North Island. and-
Nickel Stancher, they called it.
Nickel Stancher, yeah. So, and then where did you go from there?
I finished boots and went to Aviation Machinist Mate School in Seattle, Washington Naval Air Station.
Did you apply to that, or did they knew
I asked
that
if
you?
I could become an Aviation Machinist Mate.
And because you had worked with motor
Yeah.
machines and things like that.
Right, yeah. And I made it, and we graduated in December of 42 in time to graduated as third-class petty officer, aviation, excuse me. Then they sent us to Norfolk to the Aviation Base Advanced Training Unit for about 2 weeks. Then assigned us to Air Group 17, which went on the bunker, was assigned to the Bunker Hill as part of Air Group 17. And I got situated down in the group that there's sent 40 of us. 10 went to the torpedo squadron, 10 to the bomber squadron, 10 to the Scott squadron, and 10 of us went to the fighter squadron. And that's where I got introduced to the Corsair, because we didn't even have any when the squadron was formed in January '43.
Yeah. What did they have? Wildcats then?
A couple of S&J trainers. They had one Wildcat that they had. But then in March or April sometime along, we started getting some Corsairs. Tommy Blackburn, the skipper, went up in the first bunch and flew one back.
Was that the Jolly Rogers?
Yes, sir.
That's right. Yeah, I thought
That
so.
was- That was the most eventful outfit I was ever in, other than the fighter engineering division of the Bunker Hill. But it's exceedingly well grouped as a kind of a carefree outfit. Like some of our pilots got put on report for Flat Hat and the Naval Air Station at Norfolk and a few things.
So they were there doing training exercises. Was the Bunker Hill there then?
No, it was still under construction.
Oh, I see. But did you know you were going to go on the
Yes,
bunker?
because it was launched on December 7th of 41. Yeah, it was still building all of 42.
Okay.
And then, along about June or July, came down to Norfolk, picked up the air group, went down to the Caribbean, the shakedown cruise. We were the first carrier in the fleet to qualify Corsairs for carrier duty.
Now, as I understand it, the Corsair initially was kind of difficult to handle, especially on landing because of the stall
Yeah.
and the torque.
Well, I was plane captain at the time, and on the shakedown cruise, if a certain lieutenant that they had on a roster was to fly that day, I automatically got 2 main wheels, and at that time they used inflatable tail wheels, because I could count on him to come in and bounce on a deck and blow all 3 tires. But needless to say, he wasn't in the squadron when they went to sea regular. He Michael himself and transferred by hook or crook.
Yeah, and which is, as I understand it, is one reason the Marines ended up with them, because they could fly them off of the
Yeah, on the ground.
islands, and then you didn't have to be as exact when you were
That's what they
coming
did
in.
with our fighter squadron. When they got to Pearl Harbor, they made them land base, but that's another story.
Okay, well, we'll get to
But
that.
it was a very nice outfit, and I learned more in VF-17 and on the fighter maintenance business on the Bunker Hill, and I did the rest of my naval career.
When you said you were a plane captain, that means that you're responsible for one plane.
Right.
And your responsibilities are?
Everything to keep the windshields clean and make sure that it didn't leak any oil. Because the Corsair had a bugaboo, I guess, it'd catch oil in the bottom cylinder, same one it had the sump with it. So always had to make sure you pulled the prop through so you didn't have any hydraulic lock, which they were capable of having with the R2800 engine.
By the way, Greg, and you too, Marjorie, if you have a question or something, just feel free to jump in there. So how long did you have? Well, you were down on your shakedown cruise. Was there any problems with the ship itself on that shakedown cruise?
No, but it had to go back to Boston Navy Yard and get finishing touches put on it. So the air group was dropped off at Norfolk, and we did more training there. But in August of '43, after the shakedown and went back, we headed for the Pacific by way of the Panama Canal.
What was that like going through the canal?
It was pretty tricky. It was 6-inch clearance, I think, from an Essex class carrier. They had to unweld about 2 gun tubs of 40mm guns so they could clear the locks of the canal. But at the time they had 3-section Liberty, so I was on Liberty the night before we got to the Atlantic side, so that put me on standby duty there. And on the Pacific side I was on the duty section, and then had Liberty the first night we went to sea. But I made up for it because I got a 36-hour pass when I hit San Diego, and I hitchhiked home to give my mother a coronary when I woke her up at 2:30 in the morning. But then they used their whole month's gas ration to haul me back to San Diego the next night. But the transformation of the ship in that one day between, had all our air group plus some replacement aircraft and a Marine detachment, a CB battalion. So I slept in my plane the whole time between San Diego and Pearl Harbor.
Did you have any veterans aboard that had, say, been at Midway or Coral Sea, or all you guys are just pretty fresh?
We had 2 pilots that had seen duty with F-SORAFs, but none of the mechanics. The biggest one we had served aboard the Ranger in the Atlantic.
And so you still had Corsairs?
Yes, we had
in
there.
San Diego, and dive bombers. What did you have?
We were also the first carrier to carry the SB-2C hell divers.
Was it as good as the SBD, or what?
No.
I didn't think so.
They used to always call it the Beast. The poor mechanics on that thing worked forever.
You always wonder why did they change? The SBD seemed such a great plane.
Oh, it was a good old plane. They thought it was obsolete because it wasn't quite as fast, but it did a better job, I thought. But
Yeah.
I
And
never worked on any of them either.
Well, they're the ones that that hit the Japanese carrier.
Yeah.
Sunk those at the Midway.
Yeah.
And the torpedo bombers. What did you have?
I had TBFs.
Avengers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you have any other planes besides that? Those 3.
Oh, we had a 36 plane fighter squadron,
Oh, your
BF-17.
Well, that's your
The bombers was
your
36,
Right.
and the torpedo squadron was only 18.
Yeah. Oh, that.
That's the way that, for Essex class carriers, the way they had them categorized.
Do you remember? Okay, now you're the guy that was having trouble down when your shakedown cruise. Is he long gone from your? So, but you had you had a plane.
Yeah, I had the planes.
And who did you have? One plane.
One plane
And
and one pilot.
And do you remember the pilot you had then?
Oh yeah, his name's Earl May.
Did he survive the war?
Yes, he did. He was an ace, and I ran across him after the war. When of course, from there I went to Bunker Hill. I went to Whidbey Island, to Adak, Alaska, then to Corpus Christi, Texas, in '49 or '48, and checked in there. And I had made first class petty officer in the meantime. So Friday night at 8 o'clock, I became the officer of the day because I was the junior one at the time. And I hadn't been on duty more than an hour and a half, and these 2 scroungy guys come in wanting to know if they could get the key to the walk-in refrigerator because they had a hang-up of deer they wanted. And I looked at him and he looked at me, and we both recognized each other at the same time. I said, "Is that you, Earl?" And he said, "Is that you, Hap?" And just went from there. So he made the hunting and fishing guide out of me because he was a recreation officer of the base.
I'm assuming that that he flew some combat missions when you were. And we'll get into that, but I'm just asking.
I got some flight time in the back seat of SB-2C one time.
Did you look?
At Majuro in the Marshalls.
Oh, yeah.
And we started in for his dive to go down, and I tripped the seat release by accident. So I got to look out over the bird cage there at 11,000 feet and watch us head towards Earth, which immediately I figured, well, I don't want to ever get caught like this again.
what was the feeling if you knew that your pilot was going out and might not come back again?
I had that happen to me. I was the first plane captain after those Corsairs were gone, and VF-18 took VF-17's place. And I happened to be the plane captain on the first casualty at 11th of November at Rabaul that lost a plane. And I was regular Navy then, so I got transferred down to the maintenance department, or the aircraft maintenance, B2E.
So your pilot was killed, do you think, or didn't come back? Or
Well, he was missing in action. I don't ever know what happened to him.
do you remember his name?
No.
And what kind of plane? What
I was on S6F then.
Oh, yeah, the Hellcats there. Okay.
Our Corsair pilots got all kissed us goodbye at Pearl Harbor.
Oh, okay. So your Corsairs, all right. So, what was, well, you had been down in the Caribbean. Did you ever get seasick, or how did you take to the water?
I never got seasick the whole time I was on it. I didn't get seasick till I was on a tube transport going from Seattle to Adak, Alaska. But that's another story.
Okay. I don't know if we want to hear that one.
Not very eventful.
Okay, so you get to Pearl. Was there still devastation from the Pearl Harbor attack that you could see
We
when you
saw
got
a lot
there?
of the wreckage, yeah. That was in the fall of '43, September, October, somewhere along there. Because our first day of combat was Armistice Day, 11th of November of '43.
Yeah.
But now we had 2 weeks to learn F6Fs after getting dethroned from our Corsair position. So we went over to Kaneohe Bay to the air station there, trained for 2 weeks.
Those planes have the same engine, don't
Yeah.
they? About the same size, except that
Yeah.
the Corsair has those gull wings and the
Well,
Hellcat has a straight
main
wing.
difference between the power plants was that the Corsair was a updraft carburetor, where the Hellcat was downdraft. And
So what's the difference about that, or why have one not another?
For the gas primer, if you over primed it, you could set one on fire through a leakage, and it kicks off, and one spark down a gasoline puddle, and you're in big trouble. But Tommy Blackburn always had everybody pull the prop through, make sure there's no hydraulic lock, and be very careful in starting Corsair, because they had cartridge starters, and if you didn't get it on 3 tries, you had to start all over again. But I was fortunate. I had a knack. Never took me over 2 cartridges to get the thing lit off. And I had some of the other plane captains had me come over there and crank theirs up.
So which of the 2 planes did you prefer to work on or have?
Corsair liver myself. S6F's nice. Hellcat's good. Grumman Ironworks put out a good aircraft, but by comparison, Corsair speed was the main thing, but I think it weighed 2 tons more, if I remember. I think the Hellcat weighed 7 tons, and the Corsair loader weighed 9 tons. So they had to get extreme efficiency out of their power plants.
Yeah.
So,
And they had a shorter struts, the Corsair did, than the Hellcat,
yeah,
which is the reason for the gull wings. So,
well, yeah.
I understand. So, so you're in Pearl. You get your, you still got your SB2Cs and your,
Yeah,
and
that was
your Corsair. and
Bomber
your
gangs
Avengers.
problems. We had enough of our own.
Yeah.
Just learning a new plane. And
So now did you become part of a task force?
oh yeah,
Which one was that?
yeah. We were with the 58.3, I think. Essex, ourselves, and the Independence or the Princeton. It was 2 Essex class and 1 of the CVLs.
Yeah.
And that's when we hit Rabaul. and the BF-17 sent a detachment out, both one to the Essex with Roger Hedrick, the execs group, and then Tommy Blackburn lit on Bunker Hill with those 6 planes, flying air cover for the fleet, while the fleet planes were over taking care of Rabaul.
Okay, so you had VF-18 out, and the 17 came in, and they
Right.
kind of flew air cover over you guys while they
There's a slight,
preference there. Huh?
there's always a humorous outlook from VF-17 because Tommy Blackburn wanted to come in and take a hot shower and get a hot meal. He was tired of living out of K rations.
Have you read that book? I think it's a Jolly Ride, something like that, about
He
him.
just sent me a autographed copy.
Did
of
you
it.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's really special to have. Yeah.
I got it when it first came off the press.
Yeah. We have it here with
We actually donated it.
Oh, okay, great. So, and who, that wasn't Halsey's task force, was it? Who, do you recall?
No,
who
we
you
had
guys-
Montgomery was our admiral on the first one. And later on, we had so many different deals.
Yeah.
But the only Essex carrier we worked with was either the Essex itself or the New York Town or the New Lexington.
So how, before you lost your plane, how many sorties did he make, or
Well, we lost him on the first combat mission.
the first comment?
We went through all the training from Kaneohe Bay, and they had flight exercises out to Espirito Santos.
Mm-hmm.
But he just had the misfortune of getting caught.
Was
the
that
first day.
the Rabaul raid?
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about Rabaul.
Well, from what the pilot said, it was quite a messy thing, but they were sure well fortified, and the harbor was well protected.
Yeah, as I recall, Rabaul was one of their bigger bases, and actually
Yeah.
we never did invade it. We just kind of went around
Bypassed it, yeah.
bypassed it, but
The Rabaul and Truck were the two
in the truck.
bugaboos as far as bases are concerned.
Did you have any missions to Rabaul, to truck?
Well, I had a couple of them.
So you lost your plane. So then you say you went. You weren't a plane captain any longer.
No, I went down to the engineering division.
Okay, and so what happens down there? What do you do?
Become grease monkeys then. Put all the 30-hour checks for routine maintenance. And,
On the planes or on the ship?
On planes itself.
On the planes themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But we change engines, which is nice when you're flying around on the Pacific trying to hold something still.
And the planes that come back shot up sometimes.
Oh, some come up pretty bad.
Did you work on fixing up that part of them too?
Oh, let that to the metalsmith's job. This later became the structural mechanics, as they call it. We're basically hydraulic and engine parts, and controls and stuff.
Did you have a lot of spare parts to work with?
They had certain ones, and of course, as you get experience with things, you know which parts you kind of get a few extra ones on hand, so you didn't have to go to the storeroom and stand in line and
Yeah.
wait and stuff like that. But I got the culmination of that operation in Korea because I was the guy that came to get everything from deck shoes to spark plugs.
So you're in your task force. Would there be like one carrier and then you'd have some other ships around you, or how did that work?
They always had 3 carriers, usually 2 Essex class and one of the Independence classes, the CVLs.
And destroyers around you?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of them.
Yeah. Now, did you undergo any enemy attacks?
Oh yeah.
Tell me about some of those.
Started right at Rabaul, and I guess the worst ones came when it was off of Tarawa for some reason or other. And when I was on a belly tank hanging detail, and the one that they always worked in groups with 3, one for the front end of the tank, one for the back end, and then usually a chief along to give you the word all the time. But we got some Bettys going after our port side.
Twin
We're on this-
engine bombers.
Yeah, we on this Billy's Hank detail, and ours was the last plane to come in, so it was right there by the deck edge elevator because they
So you were going to switch tanks? Is that what you're?
put on the one that they replaced the one they dropped.
That's what I mean. Yeah, yeah.
And so we got the thing on there, and they made the plane come down to the lower deck, the hangar deck. So when the elevator got back up, we climbed on that and went down to the hangar deck. Meantime, general quarters sounded. They shut all the roller curtains, stuck us out, 3 of us on this deck edge elevator on an S6 class carrier, down, and then they started zigzagging. We took water over the front end of the elevator. We was trying to wrestle this tank at the same time. So we had a very good time. Big sea story.
Did your ship take any hits?
Yeah, we came back from battle damage. That was a year later, though. The first time.
Well, we'll get into that.
The Rabaul and some of those earlier ones, we didn't get hardly any damage, but we got a lot of near misses. No kamikazes till after I got off. So
Okay. Now,
we had some close ones, though. But the farther the war progressed, the more active it became, so to speak.
And were you below decks most of the time when
Yeah,
when
we're
they
off
were
the hangar deck.
when they
Except
were?
when we were on a belly tank detail and hangar flight.
Well, that's. I mean, what are your thoughts when you're down there? That if we get hit hard or bad, am I going to be able to get off this thing?
Later on, as one time in '44, we got a near miss and scattered a lot of shrapnel through. I got a piece right by there, so I went down to the sick bay with everybody else. And if you had a tetanus shot through their sorting system, you got a Purple Heart. But if you didn't, you just went back to work. Lucky me, I went back to work.
Yeah. So that first cruise, so to speak, was how many months or?
It's actually just about a year, from 11th of November of '43 to 11th of November of '44. That's why we got that thing about the Holiday Express there. Most of our actions were on holidays for some reason.
Around that time, yeah. Okay. And so during that period of time, they were all pretty much in the same area, or were you moving on?
Well, we worked.
What were some of the islands or the battles that you were
We
in?
went up through the Marshalls and the Gilberts and Eniwetok and Ulithi and Truk, and
Any
we were up into the Philippines in the latter part of the cruise.
Uh-huh. Any problems with submarines?
No, we were always protected by the destroyers and company type ships.
So you were mentioning, I think later on, that you did take some battle damage.
Yeah.
Tell me
Got
about that.
a close one. Well, I don't know. It was just an accumulation of close hits.
Okay.
To-
But no.
Some guys had got shrapnel. Usually, what the main culprit was as far as people, but I was far enough inboard that I didn't catch any of the stuff like that.
But
But
the
n-
reason for the ship to go into Bremerton for repairs
Yeah,
was
it was
from
basically battle damage.
battle damage.
Being out there for a year,
Yeah.
getting pot shotted at.
But
stuff.
no direct hits where you
No.
were you
No, they got those after I got
Well,
off.
because I thought that Bunker Hill got
Yeah.
hit pretty good
It was
with
in May
kamikazes,
45.
wasn't it?
I got off in January of '45.
Well, okay, tell me about what happened to it in '45.
Well, after I got off, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's when they took the big one. That Max Kennedy wrote the book about two kamikazes hit one right about the midships and one right in the number 3 elevator pole. And it was a rough mess because this buddy of mine from Plymouth, Massachusetts, he lived through the whole thing, and he got from the hangar deck to the flight deck by crawling on the outside of the ship. Some guys in the gun tub threw a line and hoisted him up and everything. So he said the hangar deck was a mess. Airplanes would melt down, the engines, the whole pile, just a pile of aluminum. Fortunately, I never got into anything that
Yeah, there's
terrible.
photographs of that, I
Yeah,
think, in
yeah.
ships that are pretty
Yeah.
famous.
But, I value my 2 years being aboard the Bunker Hill, because I think we saw a pretty good active part of the war from 11th of November of 43 at Rabaul till up through the Philippines liberation. So we got in on the Marianas turkey shoot. That's when we first had some night flying done. We even had a Jap in our landing pattern wanted to get aboard, but they kept waving him off. Finally run out of gas and splashed.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
And stuff like that. But
Yeah.
when I guess it was Michener had ordered the fleet to lights on because they had all these planes coming back to Philippines. That's, in fact, I was, I don't know, doing something on the flight deck, even though I was supposed to be on the hangar deck working. Plane that I was doing on some knick-knack thing. But one of the planes come in and bounced over the barriers and lit on top of a plane. They had a pretty good fire going, which, of course, I was way up forward and jumped into the catwalks to get out of the way, but scared the fire out of you pretty well. But I'm proud of the service that I gave wartime.
Absolutely. By the way, I want to go back a little bit. Did you have any, were you married at the time when you
No.
were in the service? Did you have anybody special back home?
No, not then, anyway.
Okay. And so, why did they transfer you off then when they did?
Just normal,
Just
because they had sent me to F4U school down in Los Alamitos. Well, the first half of the guys went on leave, and been about a dozen of us went down, not realizing we had already had Corsair experience. In fact, we knew more about them than the instructors did, but then we didn't tell them that. But a bunch of us got together on Christmas Eve of '44 in Hollywood, drank to the old days. But like I say, I enjoyed my time with VF-17 and Bunker Hill
Yeah.
as much as I did anything in the Navy, but I went to a lot of other places, Whidbey Island and then to ADAC.
What were you doing at those places?
Biggest thing I did in ADAC was learn to become a flight engineer on a PBY.
Really? So you went up?
But I just came back from engine school to Whidbey Island. They put me in charge of the engine change shack. But I guess whatever their rotational schedules were, it didn't matter where you worked or what horsepower you had or anything else, time to go.
Yeah.
So the draft going to Alaska from Seattle, they put me in charge of it. And I asked the master sergeant, what the heck did you put me in there? I was junior one of the bunch. I said, oh, I just went down a list and used the first name I could pronounce. So just that kind of luck was a good portion of what I had. Be in the right place at the right time.
And where were you when the war ended?
Engine school in Chicago. That's where I made my first mistake of getting married.
Oh. Did Did you marry someone from back there then?
Oh, yeah.
Or she was,
I called her a Chicago improved Okie.
Oh.
That's not for publication.
Behave yourself.
Yeah. And okay, so and then you decided to stay in the Navy, did you?
Yeah, I'm a ship over for 2 years. It was like, because the peacetime Navy was a picnic. I had so much good duty I couldn't stand it.
And where was your next duty station then after that?
Oh, in Corpus Christi, I was at Rod Field Auxiliary Station, Cabinets Field Auxiliary, Navy Recreation Barracks in Port Aransas, Texas, when I was hunting and fishing guide for a year and a half.
Mhm.
And when that closed, I had to go back to the theater at the main station. We had a choice of working in a theater or working in a hobby shop. And I ended up being the store manager of the store at the hobby shop for a year and a half. Had an expense account to fly to Dallas twice a month. All I did was call for an airplane down at operations and go down and got acquainted with a first class enlisted pilot. So we made the trip twice a month and bought the hobby supplies and stuff. But we had expense money, $5 for a taxi cab that we hitchhiked and got a bottle instead of. What do you expect from a bunch of sailors? You know?
So that was your hobby, huh?
Yeah, but actually the last 2 years that I was in, I did more storekeeping than I did mechanicing, because the rated guys were the only ones that stayed in. So they're just surplus. But this chief storekeeper that I knew in Whidbey Island from when I was in the engine change shop, he asked me if you want to be an expediter, and I says, what's that? He said, that's the guy that chases the parts through the system right now without having to wait 3 days for it to work. To call them AOG, aircraft on ground. That was the priority they used, and I did that for about the last year I was in.
And when did you get out?
I got out in January of '50. I was the first sailor discharged from the Naval Air Station, Corpus Christi. And I run into a buddy of mine that we had been to Class A mech school in VF-17 together. He went down when we were land based because he was a hydraulic specialist. He says, come out and be a weekend warrior. And see, I was trying to go to school on the GI Bill, $180 a month, and come out, play around at Los Alamitos for a weekend, get an extra $27.20. That made my income over $200 then. It was in tall cotton. But I didn't know that about 4 months down the line, I get a telegram saying, come back to active duty. That's when I got the reserve squadron. Like I said, it had F4U4s with 4-bladed props, which is an improvement. And in the process, they had gone with downdraft carburetors because the updraft were fire prone if you didn't know what you're doing. And it was a picnic compared to South Pacific.
Yeah, that's for Korea.
Yeah. We ended up going to Korea on the Bonhomme Richard, and they had a first class petty officer's mess, so it's separate from the regular enlisted guys, because the chiefs already had theirs. And even coming out of Japan one night, in the first class mess, we had frog legs, which he talked to the GI and he says, well, what dream ship are you on, you know? But
So what you had done, you'd gone into the reserves, but then come back on active duty as
yeah,
a reserve.
Yeah, did 2 years.
They needed you for Korea, basically?
Yeah, well, this fellow, buddy of mine, his name's Red Edmiston, and he and I, in this reserve squadron, had more Corsair experience than anybody. So we just ran it. In fact, we had a chief come in one day, and he had to check in with me. And the next day, he had a chick out with me, and I said, I don't know how you got what you got, Harlow, but says, I sure wish I had got you transferred out of here, but they transferred me instead.
What, the Bonhomme Richard, what was its designation? Number?
CVA 31. It's an Essex class carrier.
And did you have any sorties off of Korea?
Yeah, flew off all reserve pilots, but we had the best maintenance record and the flying record of any reserve squadron out there.
They lose anybody?
No. No, we were.
And then usually they would be strafing and stuff like
Yeah.
that, ground support.
Yeah, ground support was their basic activity.
Yeah.
So like I say, it's different. There's climate change. It was like going on a pleasure cruise, but we still. I got a letter at home. Says our squadron had the best maintenance record of any reserve squadron going. So that was signed by our skipper. So I figured if he's a lieutenant commander, he should know what he's writing down here in black and white.
So when you went off active duty then, what did you do after 2 years?
Well, I got out of the Navy and went to work at a parts store for a guy that used to work for my dad when he had a parts store and blah, blah, blah.
Where was that?
In Santa Ana.
Uh-huh.
I ended up back there.
Yeah. Well, I meant to ask you, your buddy from high school that you guys went to the
Oh.
Navy together, where did he go and how did
He went on a destroyer as the air conditioning guy, and then he got out after 6 years, went into the air conditioning business in
That's right,
Indio.
you told me that, yeah.
Yeah. But
Where was the air? Oh, in Indio.
Indio,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, you told me
Ham's
that.
Air Conditioning Service.
Okay. So you're back at the parts department in Santa Ana.
Yeah, I worked for him. And I thought I'd make more money working for another guy and give me a tantalizing offer. But I'd already kind of been playing around, thinking of going in business for myself. And I didn't last very long with him as soon as he found out I was going in business for myself. But we started, had one partner and also had worked for my dad back in the 20s and the 30s. But he had done all the shop work, repair work, so he'd take care of the machine shop end of it. And I did the parts, and we hooked up with NAPA or Napa.
Mhm.
And we had the first Napa store in Santa Ana.
What street? Where was that?
Corner of 5th and Bush in Santa Ana. And we moved out to 1039 West 4th Street in 1959 because we'd grown, and the bulk of our business came from the west side of town because all the other parts stores were east of us, except for one. But, well, I did that for counting the parts stores that I worked for, owning half interest in one in Santa Ana and owning one in Yucca Valley. And then afterwards, working for 2 different car dealerships. I did 23 years in the auto parts business. I became an outside salesman and did that for 23 years before I retired
Wow.
after 10 years in the Navy.
Selling parts or cars or what?
Expendable maintenance supplies, nuts and bolts, electrical terminals, spray cans, brass fittings, most anything out of a threaded fastener you'd want.
Well, you would travel or you had your
In a
store?
small territory from Pomona to Kingman, Arizona, and Indio to Bishop.
Really?
Other than that, I was just taking life easy.
What kind of car were you driving around all those
I
ways?
wore out 5 pickups in that time, Ford pickups.
Yeah. And where were you living most of? Where did your kids grow up?
Yucca Valley.
Yucca Valley. Now, are you married again by this time, or what?
Yeah.
Okay. And your second wife, where did you meet her? What was her name?
Just kind of an accidental start that clicked pretty good for a while.
Her name was June.
June.
Yeah, and she had 4 kids. That was the biggest trouble. raising the kids, but we had one of our own.
And what was your child's name?
I was Molly, my daughter,
And where does she live now?
Yucca Valley.
Oh, okay.
My son got a son and just had a grandson. So I got 4 generations of Harlows living in Yucca Valley.
And Yucca Valley. What's your son's name?
Harry.
Well, what else?
We call him Russ. His
Call
middle
him
name is
Russ.
Russ.
He goes by Russ.
Okay, so you have how many grandchildren then?
Let's see.
5.
Well, yeah, 5, yeah.
And a great
3
One
great.
great,
3?
yeah.
4 great grand.
Yeah.
4 great grandchildren.
I can't keep track of them. They're going on too fast.
And where do you live in Yucca Valley?
Up in the north end of town, almost into the Yucca Mesa area.
What street do you live on?
Buena Vista Drive.
Okay. So you've been in Yucca Valley for how many years?
Since 1963.
Wow. And this pretty young, in fact, this young lady, why don't you go over and sit next to me, if you would.
Oh.
Margie, where did you guys meet?
I was a waitress in Yucca Valley.
Yeah.
At a place called Ray's Cafe.
Is it
And-
still there?
No, it's no longer there.
Yeah.
And that was in '67. And I knew his wife and family. And, but he used to bring his crew in from his parts house at noon. They'd close down and he'd bring them in. And
Hold that thought for a second. I gotta change tapes right now.
Okay.
Yeah. You want another sip of water there, you guys?
Yeah,
You can
right
share
right here.
if you like.
cooler over here.
So. So he'd bring his buddies in.
Yeah, bring all his crew from his business in, and I'd serve them lunch just about 5 days a week. And
What was the bill of fare? What did they usually
I
like for
think
lunch?
they usually all loved the hot beef sandwiches. They really liked those. And in '72, my husband at that time bought a service station, a Texaco station. So I worked there and also waitressing. I learned how to put air in tires, check oil, and when we did a lube job, we not only vacuumed, but we cleaned the windows inside and out, which you don't find anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, and so over
Well,
the years.
at Texaco, I remember the old Milton Berle show. And
Oh,
they had
yeah,
the,
Milton
they had
Berle,
that commercial, and they'd be singing, and the guys would be out there wiping the windows and all that stuff.
Yeah, but that was quite a time, and then my husband got very ill, and we had to close it down.
Mm.
And I continued working in different restaurants in the area. I was at a dinner house called Callahan's. I was the head waitress there for a year until they sold out. And then I went to work I worked at several different ones up there. And I retired at the age of 70 after my husband died. And so I had 3 children, and
What are their names?
I had Ted. He's the oldest. He just retired from the school district, Morongo Valley, or Morongo Basin School District. And I have a daughter, Linda, and she lives in Palm Desert. And I have my youngest son, Mark, also known as Charlie. He lives in Riverside.
Okay, all pretty close by then.
Yeah.
And you have grandchildren too?
I have 1 grandson and 1 great-grandson.
Okay. And where did you grow up? What was your maiden name?
My maiden name was Maynard. My father was a newspaper man, and he took me with him a lot of places. When I was about maybe 10 years old, he used to take me out to the Fullerton Airport. We'd get on his buddies, the pilots out there, they put me in the old Stearmans and take me for rides. And then I was privileged to ride in a tri-motor Ford that used to carry the mail from Fullerton Airport to the Los Angeles Airport. And I got to ride in the final flight of that with my dad. So, and then when Pearl Harbor, that day, it was a Sunday, I'll never forget, because Dad grabbed me and off we went to the newspaper office and the teletype coming through, and we were there all day long, reading that. And in the meantime, right across the street from the newspaper office was the fire department, and we had our car parked over there. Well, when we went to leave, our car had been stolen. So that day, we remember that very well.
I guess. Yeah.
And during the war, I did, when I got older, 16, 17, they used to get the girls the USO, and we'd go out to the Air Force Base there in Santa Ana and dance on Friday nights. And I had a brother that went in the Navy. He went to UCLA in the ROTC, and he graduated from there and went on. But he didn't see any service until Korea. So, but I don't know.
Where did you go to high school?
Fullerton High School, Fullerton Indians.
Yeah. And then how did you go to college after high school?
No, I got married and I had my children. We lived in San Diego. I married a fellow from San Diego, and when in '66 we moved to Yucca Valley because of my husband's health, and like I say, I was a waitress and raised my kids there.
And so then, and you've been married for how long now?
App and I have been married 8.5 years, and it's been wonderful. We had both lost our spouses, and we ran into each other at the tortilla section of Stater Brothers. And that started it all, didn't it?
Yeah. So you have fajitas every anniversary, I guess. Huh?
One of the first things we discovered about it is her dad was a county clerk in Santa Ana and signed my divorce papers for my first wife.
That must have been some kind of an omen, I suppose.
And then my mother sold him his first house when he moved to Yucca Valley.
Really? Oh, well, it was destiny.
Divine intervention.
And have you done much traveling? What do you like to do to
We did,
occupy
in our first few years of marriage, but since then, we've taken turns in having medical problems and.
Well, did you drive around?
Oh yeah,
or
we loved Arizona, down in the southeastern part.
Did you have a travel trailer or anything like
No.
that, or just go
Just
around?
go, yeah, we had we just enjoyed that, and we made a couple of trips up to Montana to see my mother and my sister, and then over to Washington to visit with his son, and then down the coast. We got to drive quite a bit.
Yeah.
And what do you do to occupy your time these days?
Well, we don't do a lot, but we see a lot of doctors. And we volunteer for our hospital, visiting nurses hospice once a week, and we pack the nurses' bags for them. And I don't know, it seems like we're busy. We don't sit.
Your daughter, you have a daughter that's here in Palm Desert, you
Yes,
say? Do you come down to see her very
In
often?
fact, we had lunch with her today. Yeah.
And what's her name?
Linda Ames.
Okay. What does she do? Okay.
Nothing. She's a housewife, and well, she writes a lot. She does a lot of writing and poetry and things like that. She's very talented that way.
And we were mentioning how you were interviewed for the local newspaper here, the Desert Sun,
Yeah.
Denise Goolsby. Did she just call you one day, or how did that come about?
I think he called her because he saw in the paper that they were going to do some interviews, and he was telling her what a nice job she did on something, and when it all worked around, and it ended up they had a lot of phone visits. So,
Have you been to the Air Museum here before, or is this your first time?
we've been a couple of times, and he was here before that.
I think at least 3 visits before.
Okay. Well, I think we're maybe getting ready to pretty well wrap it up. Is there anything either of you would like anything else to share that we haven't covered?
I can't think of anything. Can you, dear?
No,
Greg, got anything you'd like to
Oh, I
ask? Any questions?
This has been great.
Okay. I usually, at this point, I like to, we have a lot of young people going into harm's way these days,
Oh, yeah.
like you did years ago. If you had any advice for them, what might it be?
You mean like join the Navy?
Yeah, he advises all of them to join the Navy,
Okay.
stay off
Just get
that land
Clean
thing.
place to sleep and get 3 squares a day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I have a lot of feelings about it, but I don't know that I've seen so many. I had to spend some time in the emergency room at our local hospital, and unfortunately next to a young Marine that had tried to take his own life. And there's so much of that, but people don't hear about that. And these kids have to go over there, and what they have to do and see is just beyond any comprehension. I feel so deeply for those boys. But with the good Lord's help, we hope we can bring them all home pretty soon.
That's right, yeah. Hap, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Well,
Thanks for
thank you.
coming in and sharing with us. Margie, thanks for coming in too. Really enjoyed this.
that it'll be helpful to somebody.
Oh, it will. It definitely will.
Little history there.
Oh, yeah. I think